Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea launches a nationwide campaign to boost consumption, which has been hit hard by the pandemic. There are bargains to be had on all kinds of consumer goods, from electronic gadgets to fresh meat and produce. Data show the U.S. economy shrank by 5% in the first quarter, its worst performance since 2008. The numbers for Q2 are expected to be far worse, but a rebound is expected in the third quarter. And U.S. President Donald Trump pays tribute to the Americans who defended South Korea in the Korean War. Yesterday was the 70th anniversary of the start of the war. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. U.S. President Donald Trump went to the Korean War Veterans Memorial on Thursday to mark the 70th anniversary of the start of the war. Millions of Americans served in the armed forces at the time of the conflict, tens of thousands of whom lost their lives. Thousands of others went missing. President Trump expressed his concerns about the current situation on the Korean Peninsula and pledged to fully support peace efforts in the region. Choi Jung-yoon reports.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump visited the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington on Thursday for a wreath-laying ceremony to honor the 70th anniversary of the beginning of the war. President Trump and his wife observed a moment of silence and saluted as a military band played the Requiem. President Trump didn't give a speech, but he greeted the elderly veterans and spoke to South Korea's ambassador to the United States.
President Trump showed an interest and shared his concerns about the current situation on Korean Peninsula. He asked how things were and asked me to send his regards to President Moon Jae-in.
This was the first time for President Trump to visit the Korean War Veterans Memorial since taking office in early 2017. Watchers are interpreting it as a way to show the firm alliance between Seoul and Washington amid the escalated tensions between Koreas, as well as remarks made by his former top national security aide John Bolton, in which Bolton was extremely critical of South Korea's handling of North Korea's diplomacy. At an earlier ceremony in South Korea, President Trump sent a video message thanking those quote who fought to keep communism out. He praised the other UN soldiers, saying the veterans' accomplishments during the Korean War were incredible. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
If you're watching us in South Korea, there are some big bargains available now as part of a nationwide retail event aimed at boosting consumption, which has been hit hard by the COVID-19 outbreak. Our Ji-young is in Busan at one of the first on-site events. Ji-young, tell us what visitors can look forward to there.
Devin, this is a much-anticipated opportunity for shoppers and businesses alike. Here at Pexco at the Busan Brand Festa, there are many products on display which can be picked off for a bargain price. Here's what the Minister of SMEs and Startups said about this festival. Take a listen.
This festival is to help citizens who suffer from the COVID-19 outbreak and spur domestic consumption to help the economy recover.
There are more than 185 booths showcasing a wide range of products from fashion items to food and home appliances. The majority of the booths are for local companies in Busan. At a section called Live Station, live shows promoting local goods are broadcast online for those consumers who are not on site. As this is the first large-scale retail festival during the pandemic, the organizers are taking virus prevention measures, including disinfection work.
Now, Ji-young, these events and bargains are, of course, available across the country. Tell us more about the campaign, though, itself.
What you can see in the background is just a glimpse of the retail campaign held across South Korea, dubbed the Korea Donghaeng Sale, which runs for 2 weeks starting today. The Korean word Donghaeng means to go along together. More than 5,000 retailers are taking part across the country, from conglomerates to local mom-and-pop stores. Consumers can get the biggest discounts online under the theme of buy value and live together, where small and medium-sized firms are pitching whopping discounts of up to 99%. Neighborhood grocery stores are selling vegetables at up to 10% below their wholesale prices. At traditional marketplaces, consumers will be getting 20% of all the money they spend back in the form of local gift certificates. And major supermarkets, department stores, online shopping malls, electronics manufacturers, and automakers are providing special deals as well. At some local events, celebrities will be on hand to promote local products, details of which can be found on the Korea Donghaeng Sale website. This is all I have for now, but I'll bring more updates in a later newscast. Back to you, Devin.
We'll be looking forward to that. Ji-young reporting there from Bexco in the city of Busan. Now, the U.S. economy shrank 5% in the first quarter due to the impact of COVID-19. This is the worst performance for the American economy since the 2008 global financial crisis. Economists expect the data will be worse for the second quarter, but then there'll be a rebound after that. Yoon Jung-min tells us more.
The U.S. economy in the first quarter saw its largest contraction in more than a decade due to the impact of COVID-19. In its latest estimate, the Commerce Department said Thursday that the U.S. economy shrank by 5% from January to March. It was the sharpest quarterly decline since the fourth quarter of 2008, when the economy shrank more than 8% amid the global financial crisis. The department said the decline reflected the response to the coronavirus as governments issued stay-at-home orders in March. And worse is yet to come. Economists predict that GDP will plunge around a staggering 30% from April to June. Forecasters, however, believe the economy will rebound in the second half of the year. The COVID-19 situation in the U.S. has taken a turn for the worse, particularly in the southern states, including Texas, Florida, and California. The governor of Texas announced on Thursday that the state will put on hold any further plans to reopen due to the surge in COVID-19 cases.
Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're now seeing increased tests that are coming back positive. That then drives what we're seeing in the numbers.
According to Johns Hopkins University, there have been over 2.4 million coronavirus cases reported in the U.S. so far. If a second wave of infections materializes in July, economists say it will cause seismic losses for the entire year. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea held a seminar Friday remotely with the World Bank and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to discuss the way the country's responded to COVID-19 using innovative technology. The country's finance ministry said that it's important to strike a balance between public health and a recovery in the economy, and that the key to this will be digital technology. The seminar was held at the request of the Gates Foundation, which was established to alleviate poverty and provide education to underprivileged groups. In the meeting, the Gates Foundation praised South Korea's fast response to COVID-19. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Friday afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, there are still concerns about second waves of the coronavirus in many countries, to be sure, but stocks on Wall Street were up Thursday. The U.S. eased regulations on where and how banks can make investments. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. market closed deeply in the green with a late session rally led by the bank shares, as the regulation news outweighed the domestic uncertainty over the rising COVID-19 cases. If you look at the policy side, U.S. banking regulators will loosen the restrictions from the Volcker rules, allowing banks to make bigger investment into venture capitals. Shares of the banks, including JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and most of these companies sharply rose after the announcement that affected the overall market to rise. If you look at Dow Jones, it added 1.2%, S&P gained 1.1%, and NASDAQ also jumped by 1.1%, breaking above 10,000 mark again. Overall, this is affecting positively in the global market. We are seeing European market also rising today. Most of the Asian market also following the suit.
Right. Korean stocks were higher today, taking their cue from Wall Street, as you said. Tell us about the local markets.
Yes. Korean market, as for the Kospi, it was up about 1.1%, but the Kosdaq pretty much closed at flat. The Korean market's been quite volatile this week. We had seen a plunging by about 2.27% in the previous session, and overall it's lower by about 0.38% for the whole week. investors have been quite confused in terms of a lot of the numbers are coming through. Economy seems to be weak condition. Overall, COVID-19 cases rising rapidly, whereas the continuation of boosting measures coming from various economies of various countries, particularly from the U.S. as well as China. So all being said, I think that the volatility of the market will probably remain so over the next a few weeks in the future, given the fact that we're not going to get much of better economic numbers, and also we will probably continue to get these COVID-19 numbers that is not necessarily positive. And because of that, even though that we are seeing continuation of the massive boosting measures coming from the various governments, the Korean companies, Korean equity market as well as companies will probably show some volatility in terms of the share prices in the future.
Big news this week, Mr. Yu, with South Korea announcing taxes on investment gains across the board, but with an exception for amounts under 20 million won a year. This is set to start in 2023. What does this mean for investors, and what effect do you think it'll have on the market?
Right. It's, as you said, it will start in 2023, so we got a few years left. And because of that, it's not going to affect the market much at the current point in time. But if they are going to charge 20-25% tax rate on the capital gains tax, most likely we will see a massive market decline, probably by sometime in the second half of 2022. Clearly, this measure is not necessarily positive. We are seeing massive injection of the money going into the Korean equity market by the retail investors. And most of these retail investors are buying Samsung Electronics and various other companies that are undervalued. And the stock price has been moving nicely upward trend. But obviously, they're not going to pay any taxes in regards to that. But by the time you get to 2022, we will see probably a massive decline in stock prices. We've seen that kind of case in Taiwan in 1980s. And we had seen like Taiwanese market falling by more than 50% in a very short period of time because of the capital gains tax were introduced. We think that similar kind of impact will have. Now, in terms of, though, we're not sure exactly whether this will be the set in stone. They are getting some advices from various other sides of the industries. So we will see. But anyway, what has been announced is that they will raise the tax rates to as high as 25% on capital gains, but they will have redemptions up to 20 million won of the capital gains. So you do not have to pay taxes up to that amount, but anything above that will be taxed. Also, one side of tax cut is on the transaction tax, which was lowered not too long ago. They will be lowering that to as low as 0.15%. But it's not like they're getting rid of it. So it's kind of double taxing in a sense. So this is not going to be taken positively in terms of the long-term trend for the Korean equity market. I think that this regulation might change, but we're not sure whether or not this will be implemented as it's announced. In any case, I don't think that this news is positive for the equity market.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see how it works out in the end. Mr. Yu, thanks so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
A committee of outside experts convened by the South Korean prosecution will soon issue an opinion on whether the investigation into Samsung's de facto leader Lee Jae-yong is valid or not. He is suspected of involvement in accounting fraud and other alleged irregularities in a key merger and in his own succession to the company's leadership. The committee's opinion is not binding on the prosecution, but it's likely to affect their next moves. Kim Yo-sun reports.
The prosecution has convened an external committee meeting to determine the validity of its investigation into Samsung heir Lee Jae-yong. The core agenda item is to determine whether to push ahead with the prosecution's plan to indict Lee over managerial succession irregularities and stock manipulation. During the meeting, which began at 10:30 a.m. Korea time, the participants first discussed the issue of former Supreme Court Justice Yang Chang-soo's resignation as the head of this specific committee of experts. He decided to step down, saying he has maintained a friendship with one of Samsung's senior executives. The committee will review the 50-page written opinions from the two sides, Samsung Group and the prosecutors. This will be followed by an oral presentation by the two parties, which pundits forecast to be a fierce battle. Lee himself is not at the meeting. After hours of internal discussion, committee members will then reach a decision. While in most cases a final decision is made later in the day, many forecast that the process may take longer this time, as an immense amount of documents need to be reviewed, considering the complexity of Lee's charges. This process of review by external experts was established after a citizens' panel formed by the prosecution came to a decision earlier this month that the issue needed to be reassessed. While the final decision of the committee is not legally binding, prosecutors have followed the recommendations of all 8 previous committees that have been established since the introduction of the system. But the results remain unclear, as the prosecution has great confidence they can prove Lee guilty over his alleged role in the controversial merger in 2015 between two Samsung affiliates, Jail Industries and Samsung C&T, in order to gain greater control over the country's largest conglomerate. Kim Yo-san, Arirang News.
One indirect effect of the coronavirus pandemic is that the city of Seoul had cleaner air in the month of March. According to data collected by sensors around the city, the level of ultrafine dust at around 50 places with high traffic congestion fell from bad to normal. The total volume of traffic in March was down by 15% on year. The city government said this is because COVID-19 encouraged so many people to stay home and not go out. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.